Good morning. My name is Sami Steigmann. I'm very honored to be here at FAU, Florida Atlantic University, one of the 10 best universities in the country. I belong to two generations. I am not only a Holocaust survivor, but I'm also a child of Holocaust survivors because all three of us, my parents and I, who were deported to Ukraine in an area called Transnistria, name of the labor camp called Mogilev Podolsk, we all survived. For 63 years, I felt that I don't belong to either generations. I did not belong to the older generation because I have no memory of that period of time. I also felt I did not belong to the children of the Holocaust survivors because most of them were born after the war, a lot of them in the DP camps run by the Allies. Something happened in November 1st and November 2nd of 2003. The Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. closed its doors to the general public for 2 days. It opened it up only to the Holocaust survivors, their children, and their liberators. There were over 8,000 people from all over the world. In meant to be, in Yiddish it's called Bashert, at the table where I was sitting, I met a man born in the same city, Chernovitz, been in the same camp, same years, 1941, 1944. He was taken when he was 8 months old. I was taken when I was a year and a half. This is the difference between history and living history. By meeting him, that prompted me to stop ignoring being a Holocaust survivor and doing something about it. In 2007, I joined the second largest Holocaust museum in the United States, the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. And in 2008, March 11th, I got my first assignment to speak to 6th graders. As you probably know, your first presentation is not the best, it's not the most complete. I did not have a story. I did not know that I can tell a story. And most importantly, I had no idea what impact I will have on such young people. Again, Bashert meant to be. The students sent me thank you letters. Each one better than the other, but one 6th grader changed my life forever. She wrote, P.S. Your story was overwhelming, and I promise I'll pass your story to my children. Because of her, and realizing the impact that I have on such young people, I have decided to dedicate the rest of my life to reach as many young people as I can, nationally and internationally.
So after the events of the Holocaust, I believe your family moved to Transylvania, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Did your family receive any help after the events of the Holocaust while you were able to make that move over there?
What do you mean help? What
help
kind
from
of help?
Other families?
No. Because one of the reasons is because from my father's side, from 42 people, only 2 survived. My uncle was not a Holocaust survivor. He was a refugee in one of the only 3 countries that allowed and accept the Jewish refugees. China, my uncle, was a refugee in Shanghai, Dominican Republic, and Philippines.
Okay. So I read when you moved to Transylvania, your parents, did they speak the language at that time? Or were they not familiar with the language?
My parents apparently did.
Did?
But I did not.
You did not.
Right, so I had to learn it when I went to school.
Okay. How was that growing up in a country where you didn't know the language? And at that time, did you know why you were there? Did you have an idea of why you're in this country where you didn't understand the language?
I was too young to understand what happened. I did not know to ask the proper questions. And young children have an affinity to learn foreign languages in a very, very quick At the same time, for me also, what helped me is the fact that I went to school.
Do you believe that the events that you and your family, speaking of your parents, had been through, do you think that affected your childhood in any way? How they raised you? Did they raise you on any set of values based on the experience that they went through?
No question about it. My parents that went through the Holocaust, it affected them in many ways. And, it's a natural process that the way parents feel, okay, is that particular thing goes from generation to generation, at least until to the grandchildren. I don't think that I was affected because my parents did not talk about it, and they did not want to burden me with those issues, and they wanted me to grow up, okay, as a normal child. And obviously, until I started to speak for the first time, I did not know anything else, and for me, it was a normal childhood. Mm-hmm. When I started to speak, and since I did not have any memories, I was started speaking about my feelings. And it was the first time that I realized that my childhood was not a normal childhood. And to give an example, I realized for the first time that I was a child, not a child, I was an emotional parent to my parents. So for instance, if my parents wanted to go out somewhere and they wanted me to go with them because understanding what they went through and seeing them in action at home, I would give up my friends and would go with them. My sister, who was born after the war, just a child of Holocaust survivors, in her particular case, she told my parents, you go on your own, I will go with my friends.
Okay. So, as I read, due to the experimentation that was done to you as a child, when did you start noticing the effects on your body?
I was in pain all my life. I could not understand that why, but at the same time, I'm coming from a generation that was very stoic, will not show in your face the pain, and that they were also not allowed to cry. The doctors were not able to find a specific remedy for the pain because it was head, neck, shoulder, and back. The intensity used to change, and at the same time also what happened is that because it was not localized and moved from place to place, we could not find a specific remedy for it. As a matter of fact, in 1974, I called myself, I became the bionic person. In the old days, the pilots, okay, they had the back pain. Mm-hmm. So to remedy that, they had something called TENS, transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulator. So basically, you put it, above where the pain is localized, and you change the intensity and the strength of the vibration. So basically, what happens is you feel those vibrations, the stimulations, and the pain itself is in the background. Okay. It's not something that solves the problem, but it's something like, for instance, when I speak to the students, the pain is still there. But concentrating on what I want to say, the pain is in the background. And that's what the TENS equipment did.
How old were you when you were able to receive that sort of treatment, I guess, if you want to say treatment?
Okay, I was at that time, I was 34 years old.
34. Yeah. So all throughout your childhood and throughout your 20s?
They didn't know what to do.
They didn't know what to do?
Right.
All right, how old were you when did your parents tell you about what happened to you as a child, or did you discover that on your own?
My parents told me that I was subjected to medical experiments, but it was strictly by an accident. It's not something that they intended to do it. they were outside, and it was one of those days that I was on the floor, excruciating pain, almost unable to move. And unexpectedly, my parents came home earlier than I thought they would. And my father never knew that I was in pain, especially in such excruciating pain.
Mm-hmm.
And when he saw me in shock, he told me that I was subjected to Nazi medical experimentation. Obviously, the doctors did not come to tell him what they did to me. They do not know, did not know, I do not know. It did not help me with the pain, but it gave me the courage to ask for compensation from the German government. And to my surprise, not only did they answer me, because I had absolutely no proof, I did not know what they did to me. I was at a stage where I was homeless, which means I did not have any documents. And when I applied in 2002, everybody was gone, including my parents, no witnesses. So again, restating, I was surprised that I got an answer because I had no proof. But most importantly, I was completely shocked when they paid me a small amount of money, 2,500 German marks, because it was much stronger than the dollar. It came up to 5,300 some odd change. Financially, it did not make a huge difference in my life, but basically what it did is an acknowledgement, a symbolic acknowledgement that they did medical experiments in other countries, also in Ukraine, and that I was one of them. And I used that to teach the young people to do the research, because not everything that they see, that they hear, or they read on TV, on the internet, is the gospel truth.
Okay, so you grew up in Transylvania, and then did you move to Israel? You moved to Israel after that, correct?
The whole family moved to Israel in 1961.
Okay, so your whole family moved to Israel.
Yes.
So how old were you at that time?
At that time, I was close to 21.
Okay.
And in Israel, I volunteered, okay, very proud. I volunteered in the Israeli Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a pilot. I worked on the most sophisticated plane that Israel had at that time, the French plane with a delta wing called Mirage 3C, and that was the plane that was used in the Six-Day War. Okay.
Do you think the experiences that you went through influenced you to join the Israeli Air Force, or what was, what did you feel? What was your drive to join?
Well, coming from the ashes and having your own country, there was a sense of pride. So I was not, how shall I say it? When somebody is called up to service, what do you call it?
Drafted?
Huh?
Drafted?
Yeah. I was not drafted.
Mm-hmm.
I volunteered, okay, because of the pride. And interestingly enough, because I was at that time close to 22 years old, and most of the kids, okay, in the military were 17, 18-year-olds, they used to call me Saba, which means they called me Grandpa.
And for those who don't know, in Israel, everyone is required to join the IDF at 18?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was in the Israeli Air Force between the years of 1962, 1965.
How long did you spend in Israel after that?
After that, I came to the United States in 1968, just by myself. And one of the reasons is I wanted to meet my uncle, who came to the United States in 1952 and settled in Santa Barbara. However, I had a second cousin who was very wealthy, promised my father that he will take care of me because I came here without money, without the language. Mm-hmm. And he lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Obviously, promises made, not kept, so I had to struggle. After 5 years, I wanted to go back to Israel. I did not want to go back before that because I did not want to go back feeling that I'm a failure. And before I decided to leave, I met my ex, and I stayed in Milwaukee for another 10 years, got married, had my son, got divorced. In 1983, I went back to Israel. In 1988, I came back for good, and right now, New York is my last home.
Okay. What did you do for work in Milwaukee when
I
you
was
moved here?
I was an accountant.
An accountant?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what do you...
I did not like it eventually, and because I tell the young people to look for a job, not that gives them the most money, but something that they can be passionate about. I did not like, I'm more of a people person. I became sick and I had to change careers, and I became a pharmaceutical representative.
Okay. And you said what year you moved to New York?
To New York, 1988.
1988. Do you think these experiences that you went through affected how you raised your son, or maybe the relationship between you two? Did you like to instill, more a certain set of morals or things like that?
Yes.
Was that very important?
It's
in
not only,
raising him?
it's not necessarily the Holocaust,
Mm-hmm.
but I grew up the Orthodox way.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, okay, we were the first group of people that believed in one God. So that's why even Christianity came later. It's, the theology is Judeo-Christian. And one of the things about Judaism is the core values. And I had those core values that were taught to me by my parents. That's what I instilled in my son. And as a matter of fact, I can say that one of the very well-known rabbis in Milwaukee gave, I think, an 8-week lecture, once a week, 8 lectures, according to the Jewish traditions. What does it make you, okay, a good parent? And I felt extremely proud because of my beliefs, because of my love for my son. I followed those things without actually, how should I say, studying them, okay, or investigating them. So it was a natural thing that I followed all of those things that the rabbi, okay, said that makes you, in Jewish life, in any life, a good parent.
So you've remained active in the Jewish community since you moved to Milwaukee?
Yes. And this is a natural thing. When you come in any new country, obviously you want to be part of a community that you're familiar with before you decide that you want also to become part of the country in which you decided to live. As a matter of fact, you can edit it if you want it, you can erase it. But as a matter of fact, I do not like to call myself a Jewish American. I don't like when people call themselves French American, Italian American, Afro American. When I lived in Romania, I adapted to the Romanian culture. I called myself Romanian. In Israel, I adapted myself to the Israeli culture. I became an Israeli. Here, I adapted to the American culture. I'm an American. However, I tell everybody, we are all Americans. That unites. But be extremely proud of your heritage. So wherever I was in each country, I was very proud of my Jewish heritage. But that's my personal opinion. When you use, for instance, Jewish American, Italian American, it's like two separate groups. Go to any other country. Everyone, okay, will tell you, if you go to France, everyone will say, I'm a Frenchman. Okay, in English, I'm an Englishman. Why not be here Americans and be one people?
Yeah.
That unites. That at least is Not everybody has to accept my opinion.
It's a great mentality, though.
Right.
Great way
And
to think.
I teach young people about tolerance. Means different things to different people. For me, it means to accept other people's culture, to accept other people's opinion. All I'm asking for, you don't have to agree with what I say, all I'm asking, just as I will respect your opinion that is different than mine, is to respect that I have a different opinion.
Back to public speaking. As one of the youngest living Holocaust survivors, does that influence you to continue to speak, or do you just get such pleasure in speaking to these groups? Is that why you continue to do it? Because for some people it isn't the easiest thing to talk about.
Right.
So, what drives you to keep going to these different organizations, different schools?
Well, I was, just to give an example, I still have the energy, and people cannot understand how I can give several presentations in one day. I was in Chicago at I believe it was a middle school, and I spoke from 9 in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon with only a half an hour lunch break. I gave 6 presentations, but when you see the effect that you have on the young people, their reaction, the hugs, okay, the selfies, whatever it is, it empowers you. It makes you feel like you and I am actually on a mission. And in a very small way, I'm hoping that I'm making a difference in this world, and for the young people, to empower the young people to make it a better world for themselves, their children, and their grandchildren.
So, what message are you aiming to pass along to the children you see, to any of the organizations? What message are you aiming to pass along?
The most important thing is that when somebody tells a lie, we have to stop it on the track. Otherwise, that lie becomes part of the narrative. Okay. Unfortunately, from my perspective, I see a lot of apathy in the campuses. I also gave a presentation. I was featured on World Jewish Congress that had the objective to make the Holocaust worldwide known. And in my presentation, I was one of the speakers for them. I said 3 things. Half of the world population does not know that the Holocaust has happened. 1/3 believe it's a myth or exaggerated. And young people are far less aware of it. From my personal experiences, going, and speaking for 11 years almost every single day, I can tell you that the young people are clueless. And in the United States, only 11 states mandate genocide in Holocaust curriculum. I was at UC Berkeley. I asked the student, how much time do they spend learning about it? And his answer was that they studied just for 1 semester, World War II, genocide, Holocaust. That's why I'm trying to say, and this is already in the universities, okay? Imagine yourself what they teach in, in schools. So that's why a lot of them are absolutely clueless. And my message is for them to educate themselves, to mentor one person, not somebody that has a closed mind, somebody that has an open mind, but does not know as much as they do, and make sure that they will mentor somebody else, because there are certain things that cannot be eradicated. Okay? They can only be diminished. Bullying. You have, for instance, anti-Semitism, hatred, genocide. So we have to empower other young people to know about it, okay, to mentor other people, and slowly, exponentially, we will be able to reduce the hatred that's happening here. I want to make two statements, okay? One of the biggest problems that we have in this country is that the people have forgotten how to disagree in a civil way. Everything is through emotion, and emotion brings up confrontation. And the other things, what I really want to say is, with everything that I went through in life, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to be, and I choose to be a happy person. In the United States, 1/3 of the Holocaust survivors live under the poverty line. I am one of them. I live in the most expensive city in the country, New York City, on a monthly income of $1,278. And as you can see, I still smile.
That's beautiful. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this.